is going to really ramp down. He's anticipating not even spending 60,000 in that final year, and that's total. So yes, FY14 he probably stay close to the max because of the field crews that are needed to carry out the work, and the collars that are still being put on. But in the last year of that 5-year study, he'd planned on spending a lot less.
And if we put that many collars on this year, those collars, what's the life expectancy of those collars? Who owns the collars? And at the conclusion of his study, if we still have collars, can we still track those collars and get a useful life out of those collars also?
We can. These have a combination, in some cases, depending on the animal, of a GPS/VHF. So the GPS portion of those data sets will be downloaded for that period. We have to continue to pay for that global, or that the satellite download work. So that's part of that cost if we want to continue to have the data. The VHF collars are ground tracked, so that would have to come from some other biologist or some other source within the department if the project was canceled, if we wanted to continue collecting that data on those animals.
But we own the data and the collars in the end. That's
right, and we own the have heart traps, we own all the hardware, we own all the vehicles, we've loaned them, and everything else. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Morai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question that I have, Patrick, did you say that in fiscal year 13 on this project, up to this point, we've paid $31,000? Is that, do I understand that correctly?
That's correct, and there are other bills outstanding.
When are those bills due?
June 30th. The maximum we budgeted for was $100,000 for the year. I imagine they'll probably get close to that.
Commissioner Rain.
On this particular project, when it was originally sold to the commission, it was sold to the commission as a study that would involve lethal use of force upon coyotes, and to thereby examine their dietary habits and other habits, and that the coyotes involved were not going to, perhaps call it, survive the process. And that was the general consensus, was that the $25,000 portion from the Predation Management Fund at that time was going to be utilized for the portion of the project that involved taking out the coyotes, and that the matching funds portion was going to be spent for the rest of the study, for examining what was going on in the rest of the study that was going on. So it was never, when it was originally sold to the committee and to the commission, back when we had lots of committee meetings on the subject, that, you know, $25,000 was for removing the coyotes in the area, and the rest was for the study portion of it. And that's why, you know, now it's coming to, it's not the same study. It's not the same project. Things have changed, they've morphed, they've twisted in the process from that initial selling of the project to what it's ended up being today. So it's, you know, a tough one to bite when we're not looking at the same project, even though, you know, it's clearly changed in the last year and a half, 2 years, when we haven't seen anything on this project since then. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I clarify that a little bit? Okay, for the record, Larry Gilbertson, Department of Wildlife. Actually, when it was proposed and submitted by my previous staff specialist, because it was a federal aid project, no portion of the money can be used for control of coyotes. And it was clearly laid out that it was going to be a study of the impacts to the coyote population, and that was all the USU coyote study was going to do, was to measure the impacts. Any removal which we had said, like Pete pointed out a minute ago, that we're still looking at going in and removing some coyotes, but we're not using study money to remove the coyotes. We would actually identify a removal effort, and probably use Project 22, which is totally a $3 fee funded project. It's clean of federal aid, and it wouldn't be looked at as using study dollars to remove coyotes. So we'd use $3 fee. So that's really what we discussed. We'd probably end up using Project 22 to go in, identify a need to remove coyotes in parts of Area 16 for mule deer. And then we would use the USU coyote study to study the impacts of that removal on the coyote population. And we would do our normal monitoring to study the impacts on the mule deer population. So that's how it was actually proposed.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That too, that's how I remember it as well. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public.
Mr. Chairman, could I add something here?
Sure.
I had a recent conversation with Mark Jensen of Wildlife Services, and because of the wherewithal about the funding and so forth, the approval of this plan, he didn't do any aerial gunning on Project 22. So that's an $80,000 expenditure, a budget item. And the window of aerial gunning is dependent upon snow conditions out there for best effectiveness. And he said that window has passed, and so he didn't accomplish any of that.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this? Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Brad Johnston, Lyon County Citizen Advisory Board. I guess I'll begin with there's nothing like being the county game board chairman for 3 days and having to come to this commission and speak on predator management. While I am new to the Citizen Advisory Board, I am very aware and familiar with the debate, sometimes the conflict over predator management. But I think something that Commissioner Morai said is very, very important, and that is, what is the goal of a predator management program, or all the programs? Because depending upon what the goal is, depends upon whether or not it's successful or not. Is it simply the reduction in the number of predators in an area? Because if that's the goal, that's easy to measure. If the goal is a reduction in predators and a resulting scientifically measurable increase in a deer herd, then that's a very different type of project. So I think the absence of goals in that, or just research questions without identifying specific goals, is a problem. I think that's one of the things we see right now, is that what are the goals? Here the question, does predator management work? And that's too simple of a question, because it's not an all or nothing proposition. Does predator control work in conjunction with other things? Does simply reducing the number of predators work to do what? And that goes back to establishing goals, and it just reminds me of things you have to do in business. You have to set goals, measurable goals, so that you can determine whether or not you are satisfying and meeting your goals and expectations. And if you can't measure your performance, you don't know where you're at. I think one of the things that came up is, I don't think the commission is providing the direction to the department adequately. Instead, these projects seem to be coming the other way. And that seems to be some of the problems and issues that's being faced today. And I certainly understand the dilemma that the acting director commented on, was how does NDOW proceed with predator management if it doesn't believe the predator management's having a net benefit? And the dilemma that is.
30
But,
seconds.
excuse me?
30 seconds.
But the reality is the $3 fee and the law that exists. It says that this $3 fee that is paid in the application or the game tag, the processing of a game tag, is supposed to go to predator management And then there is a list of criteria or things that can be done. Studies are included, but it's not read so brightly that any study on a predator satisfies the statute. And so when we addressed this and talked about this at our CAB meeting, our biggest concern is whether or not these programs are being adequately examined as satisfying the statute, and whether or not we're just saying okay because it might involve predators. So what our motion that we approved unanimously was to ask two things: that the commission make sure they're satisfied that the Nevada statute is being satisfied with each program that's being put forth, and two, going forward when programs are presented to this commission as part of this plan, there is an explanation as how they believe it will satisfy the Nevada statute, in particular NRS 502-253. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'll be real brief. I'll answer your question. Mr. Chairman, I am a big game tag applicant, and I believe that my money is well spent on sage grouse projects. Two other brief things. I know quite a bit about this issue, and I absolutely believe that predator management can work. There's plenty of historical evidence, and I could talk about a lot of specifics, but I won't. The last thing I'd like to ask is that I think I'd like to make a suggestion that the efforts of private trappers be included in the analysis of whether these things are working or not, because we have a significant number of, the numbers that we do are significant. And I think any analysis of this study, that is data that should be included going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joy?
For the record, Ken Joy, representing myself today. Let's move forward and look at the next fiscal year. And in doing so, I would like to request that during the evaluations of how to properly manage or address or correct a problem, whether it be with ravens, coyotes, deer, whatever, that we don't get bogged down with the process. Of course, it is important and necessary. However, doing something on the ground is better than doing nothing. And I agree completely with what Commissioner Morai said earlier. And my second thing I had to talk about today was the sage grouse is very important. And I guess I would look to the commissioners to determine what resources are concentrated where. My recommendation is to take what you need. I, as do you, enjoy wildlife and simply being outdoors. If the bird gets away from us, what's next? Let's do what we have to keep what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell?
For the record, Darrell Harwell, it's Washoe County. At our board meeting, and this was a discussion, and we make the recommendation that the advisory board take no action until later when we can have more support material, interact with the services, interact with everything, and have a complete thing. So Washoe County is take no action.
Mr. Dixon?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. I will say that Commissioner McBeath, I appreciate your time, and Commissioner Lane was there. We had a very long and interesting debate. We had 5 members of the board beside myself at this meeting, and we ended up with 2 people abstaining just because they didn't feel, as pointed out by Darrell Hartwell, there was enough information to make a real decision. We had one person, as Commissioner Beth already said, that was really kind of violently opposed to this, I should say, and very outspoken, and justifiably so in my viewpoint. There was something that has been used when you guys are talking about statistics. And one of the things I want to caution us when we use statistics to do things is Commissioner Morai brought up the fact, well, you know, we had more tags allocated in this area than we've ever had, so that may be a sign of success. Remember that we've changed the number of tags that we've been allocating in the last couple of years, especially buck tags. In this last year, we saw it massively during the season, you know, during the quota setting meeting. And that was really driven by NDOW trying to go in and change the makeup of the herds that we had. So be real careful when you compare number of tags issued to whether we're having success to the other measures and goals that we have out there. And that's just a warning for any sort of stuff, but that's just one example. Thank you.
Gil?
Thank you. Gil Yana, Carson Advisory Board. I spoke before the commission a couple of years ago about the process of applying for these various projects and the reporting that was done or not done. And a year ago, there was a tremendous improvement in the application process, the material that was provided by the applicants, so that we really had a much better understanding of what the project was to entail. The process of reporting the results of some of the projects on an annual basis, so we knew, do we want to continue this, or we're not getting any place and we ought to just terminate it, really didn't reach the same level of improvement that the application process did. And what I heard this morning is that a lot of us are just finding out or realizing and starting to look at the data more carefully, that a lot of this money has been used, the terminology been used going down a rat hill, because when we're doing the same project and yet there's no correlation between what the project was supposed to show and what the project actually produced. So I think the review of these process and the procedure during which, you know, we follow up on these projects, and when do you just say, you know, we're not getting our money's worth, let's better spend it on something else. And I hope what comes of these review issues that you're going to do and is going to be beneficial in the long run, because we're going to take a good hard look at how the money is spent. And I think, as was just spoken by Paul and Joel, the whole process undergoing a big review like this is going to wind up with us gaining a lot of experience in being able to apply that knowledge to all the future projects that you approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Rex?
Rex Flowers, representing myself. Start with, I would hope you would keep Project 22 in place, ongoing. That allows us to go into specific areas, specific times of year to take care of specific problems. That's the way I always thought predator management was going to be done, is we would target knowing that we have a fawning issue, a predation problem in a fawning area, and we could go in and resolve that problem at that time. As far as predator money being used for sage grouse, I don't have a problem with it. As a private citizen, I'd like to see the lethal part kept on predator, use our predator funds for the lethal part. These other projects that are more research or help with the landfills and the carrying removal on the highways, perhaps move that over to our upland game stamp money. We had an excessive amount of money left over last year, no place to spend it. We're just sitting on that money anyway. And if we put it there and we can title it as research, then perhaps we can get some PR money to also help us to further extend that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reed?
John Reed, Washoe Cab. Not to beat it to death, but I did ask my wife this morning, what does wildlife damage mean to you? And she said that's when lagomorphs are eating my tube, my sprinkling tubes there. it's kind of an ongoing fight for me when I'm dealing with third levels of consanguinity, anthropogenic resource subsidy. You know, members of us and the general public read these studies. It would be helpful, I think, Mr. Director, if we could have either glossary attached to these bigger ones, or at least the first time they use this stuff. Too many times I think we use big words to obfuscate our meeting, and it gets to be a little bit more than tedious. I'm an educated man and I'm struggling with this stuff. Now, I've got a couple of other thoughts. One is that I agree with Rex. Project 22 kind of covers the other ones and it allows Endow a lot of flexibility to target some of these animals. The rest of this, I have two real big problems. One, if I were sitting in your seat, I'd be trying to find out why these spectacular wildlife biologists, which we've got, would sit there and say there's zero statistical significance and then say, let's continue these studies. Something else is going on here. I don't believe that they mean that, but their name's attached to it, and I think there's something else going on here. And second of all, the politics of the sage grouse. I'm convinced this whole problem with sage grouse that's spread in 11 western states, and as near as I can tell, the BLM nor the Fish and Wildlife Service can tell us how many they want to see before we've got the problem solved. We're just about to the position where it's kind of like, it's for the kids. Well, now it's for the sage grouse. And all that's doing is stifling discussion about what we really ought to be doing, what's necessary to be doing, and how much this is politics and how much this is wildlife. That was all.
Thank you. Dr. Lant? Then Karen, you'll be after Dr. Lant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Gerald Lennon, representing Nevada Hunters Association. We had some long talks over this, and at the committee level, and all the commissioners weren't there, I went over the history of this bill, and I wanted to address that. And we originally was part of the proponents of the bill in 2001 when most of you guys weren't even here. And was this plan developed or conducted under the guidance of the commission? And the statute is very clear. Any program developed or wildlife management activity, blah, 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 must be developed and conducted under the guidance of the commission. So I asked a question, was this plan developed or conducted under the guidance of the commission? I think the answer is no. And if not, you violated the law and this plan is illegal, and therefore I don't think you can approve it. Now, Endow developed the 2013 plan by themselves without any commission input, which makes it illegal. The commission had no input or on funding of the $100,000. In the second legislative work session that we had on this bill in 2009, we're trying to find an amendment that worked for all. And the director testified under oath how the plan would work. And I just want to read the testimony, a couple sentences. And I did this at the committee level, but all the commissioners weren't there. And the director at that time said, we work with the predator subcommittee of the Board of Wildlife Commission and we share ideas. We hone and modify our proposal based on their input. Sometimes they come up with an idea that we had not thought of. It is a good one. We research and integrate it. We have a good working relationship. That was the intent of the legislature, to work with the committee. And those are the comments. And if you look at the other, and I did it yesterday, the intent of the legislature is very clear from their legal staff saying the commission has authority to approve the plan. And that's very, very clear. Now, this plan should have been done in June of 2012, and now it's too late to do anything. This is incompetence or definitely negligence. The commission has wasted $500,000 of the sportsman money in predator fees by this being too late. This plan needs to be completely rewritten. You've already discussed that. I heard all the excuses from the members why they did not follow, the committee members, why they did not follow or develop or approve the predator plan for 2013. They were too busy with bears. You know, that's no excuse. That's BS. I put the blame directly on the chairman of the commission who appointed the committee and did not demand them to do their work and develop a predator plan as required by law. You can delegate authority, but not responsibility. Now, wildlife will have to suffer, and we sportsmen get a bad name as hiring killing specialists in the plan and using killing 240 times in the plan. That would not be in there if we would have had an input into the plan. Now, instead of everyone fighting over the wording and intent of a bill that is now law, let's get together and implement the law the way we should. And I think you're talking about it now, and I applaud you for that. If this plan had public and commission involvement, many would have detested words like killing. It's resource protection, pure and simple. That's the word. It's resource protection. And I don't care what McNish says. Now, on the Utah plan, we're wasting all this money. And if Commissioner Wallace would remember, I was on the commission when we gave $25,000 to Utah. Commissioner Wallace made it very clear when I think he made the motion, if we give $25,000 Utah, it's only good for 1 year, and there's no guarantee we're going to get it year after that, as I recall. And the reason we did this, because the department wanted this project. And the reason the department never came forth with any projects, and that's why we had to come up as a commission with projects, because the department never had any projects. And so we approved this one because the department wanted for 1 year, $25,000. If they wanted more money, there was no guarantee of it. And I think Commissioner Wallace made a big point of that. We don't guarantee it's coming down in the future. And so here we had the department spend $100,000 without you guys even knowing about it, without us knowing about it, without the cabs knowing about it. And that's totally wrong. That's a total waste of our funds. And I think that you have to reject this plan until the department follows the law. And this Utah is so bad, $100,000. We spent $294,000 on this. And these could have been matching funds that could have been used for other projects, like you said. We could have used them for a lot of different things on the PR money. And we've wasted $294,000, and this project, you know, like government plans, they start here with the goal, and then they expand and use a lot of money. And I think you commissioners should have been involved in it, but you don't know about it. I don't know about it. And that's why this whole thing should be rejected. And if they spent the money, take it out of their budget. But it should be rejected. And at the public comments, I'll tell you how Alaska does theirs. Thank you.
And
I'll
in
take
reply
any
to,
questions if you want, because I've been around a lot longer than anybody on the commission. I'm very knowledgeable on what we did on this Predator plan and with the Predator money.
well, that's a loaded one. You know, you say that you put the blame squarely on me. I'm the chairman, I take the blame. If you need to hear that, I'll take it. That's not a problem. There's been an ongoing discussion on whose plan it was. That discussion's gone on for quite a while. There's been multiple calls made to the Attorney General's office to discuss that issue. I think we all recognize that we're where we're at, and we need to move forward, and there's been some changes made, and maybe some of that will help us move forward also. So if you need to hear me say that I did something wrong, I'll say it. We're not where I want to be, but we're here. Let's get done and get it over with and go forward. Who's next? Karen, thank you. I knew you were next.
Thank you. Commissioners, thanks for this opportunity to talk. I'm Karen Boger, member of Nevada Chapter Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, but I probably should just speak for myself today because I am probably the person up here speaking who is least knowledgeable and has the least background on this subject, but I'm very passionate about wildlife and their appropriate management. So with that said, I would just like to say that having gotten my hands on the 2013 Predation Management Plan, I looked at it with a lot of interest and curiosity, and I found that, to me, representing just the general public, it had some very good data in there that I thought would be useful for all of you to make wise decisions going forward regarding what's going to work as far as predation management projects. And in general, my takeaway from reading the document was that predator management can be very successful in times where it's very targeted either to the individual predator or very targeted in a limited area. But in general, conversely, that predator control has not resulted in mule deer population increase nor nesting success for sage grouse in the projects that were enumerated. Rather, the data concludes that precipitation, habitat health, and human-caused conditions are the limiting factors more than predators. And the other thing I noticed, and that John Reed has pointed out, is that there seems to be this huge discrepancy between the recommendations for continued predation control not matching up what the data is saying in terms of success. And so it seems to me that the issue then is this $3 tag fee, which is practically mandated to be spent on predator control primarily for benefit of mule deer. And since it's not being met, the objective's not being met by this method, the money still must be spent. So I would suggest that the fiscally responsible thing to do would be to take a portion of that pot of money and put it toward habitat management restoration projects, projects to mitigate human-caused impacts, and monitoring of those projects to determine the level of success, and any other research that may help determine the most effective ways to retain and restore healthy wildlife habitat and populations. And I think that the two Raven projects would fit that bill, Mr. Robb, the two that are suggested related to roadkill and the what do you call it, the disposal areas.
We're past 3 minutes now, so if we could wrap it up.
Oh, I'm very sorry. So I think right now you should jump into doing what you can to come up with a better plan for 2014, and that there's going to be a far better timeline and much more coordination between the commission, NDOW, and any other entities that you think can give you appropriate information. Oh, and the CAPS as well, of course. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Castanelli. Mr. Castanelli has the opportunity to sit through this discussion twice. He sits on the committee, and I appreciate that.
For the record, Tom Castanelli, I wear many hats. As stated, the newest one is being a member of the Wildlife Damage and Management Committee. Great one. These issues that come up today have been vetted pretty well, I think, by the counties and to this point. We're behind the 8 ball on this year, there's no doubt. This committee was set in place to give guidance to the department, is what our deputy attorney has told us. I think we, at that point, that the commission can give the guidance for this year's 13th, and I think we need to move on in the future and get 14 going with this committee. The other hat I wear is to the sportsmen of Humboldt County on the County Game Board. I think counties and sportsmen need to get involved in this. We're leaving this up to this commission, and that's not right. I mean, we need to put our input and get that prior to what we have going this year. A lot of things, research projects I put down, issues. I think there's places for research in this. Without research, how do we know where to go? But we have to research the research projects to make sure they're the proper projects we want to pass with this money. This money comes from sportsmen. It was meant for predator control, but research is in that, I believe. The other question that I should get before my 3 minutes gets up is, as a sportsman, I feel sage hen are probably the #1 project in this state at this point in time. And predator control with sage hen, I would be all for that as a sportsman. As a rancher, the same issues. We've got to realize we've done a great job, you've done a great job in this state. To create predators, you need a prey base. And our wildlife is doing very well in this state. And that's the prey base for predators. And everything correlates together. As our wildlife does exceptional, the predators are going to boom with it. And how to stop that is a very complex issue. And I don't know. I watch how we do it in agriculture, especially coyotes. We kill a lot of coyotes on these ranches, and it just seems to propagate. I mean, I don't know if that's a correct answer, and that's where I'm saying research, where we need some research. How are we going to stop the propagation of these predators by killing them? I don't know if that's 100%. I think there's a place there for that, and
We're beyond 3, if you could wrap it up, too.
okay, I think we really need to look at targeting where we spend this money on smaller projects and get that going. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, Larry, maybe you could answer this, or Mr. Bradley. I just wanted to step through the list and make sure I'm clear on the history of the FY13 proposals.
The new ones or the old ones?
I'll start with the old ones. So project 6, 18, 20, 21, let's just stick with those first 4. Those are all projects that were developed in collaboration with previous commissions and that have been at least partially funded this year. Is that correct?
For the record, Larry Gilbertson. Yes, that's correct. Project 6, 2001, and we talked about goals. They're stated, in the title and in the plans. And so Project 6 was started in 2001, protection of desert bighorn. We were transplanting bighorn into that new area, the Delmars, and we planted 287 bighorn over the years. The biologist was hoping to document as a goal 150 bighorn over a 2-year consecutive period. 2 years ago, we classified 135, so we're probably pretty close to that goal of seeing that many bighorn in that area, hopefully. Project 18 started in 2004. That was a cooperative project set up by Washoe County Game Board. It was pointed out that the department biologists weren't coming up with projects, and so we did solicit county game boards and others, and this is a Washoe County Game Board. In spite of the analysis we've talked about today, a couple of years back, or maybe initially, we talked about it being a 10-year project. And in all fairness, one of my pet peeves is people quote studies, and often that's a 2-year study. And a 2-year study is better than no study, but in biological situations, sometimes over the long term, given a lot of different weather situations, sometimes you might see a change finally after a long time period. So in all fairness, if we run this one out through the 10 years, at least people can't say it was too short of a study. And so that's a good part of that we've looked at it over a long period of time. We propose to carry that one on. Project 20, protection of California bighorn. The goal there was minimum population viability, which our biologist is measuring. That's the North Washoe biologist is watching that one, and he will report on that when he feels it's at that level. And it sounds like it is, because we're seeing bighorns move even out of the area, and it sounds like we're getting pretty close to that one. The raven control one for sage grouse, am I going too far? That one's obviously a good project. Started in 2007. The one before started in 2008.
So those projects are all in place, have contracts in place, and in some cases have already been partially funded.
Work's already been going on those.
2022's been in place for quite a while, is my understanding.
Well, it's actually, it has 2010 here is when it was actually started and called this, excuse me. But it was it's a really good one, as was pointed out, that it gives us the flexibility to treat problems that are identified in a really short turnaround as long as Wildlife Services is available. And we've even used it for when we're transplanting bighorn sheep. We can go out there and treat the area for those releases of small numbers of animals.
And there's a contract in place on 22, but.
Yes, that's with Wildlife Services.
Okay, and I think 25, we've probably
right
hashed over.
And then the other two that we recommended to discontinue was Project 23. We haven't, or I think we're done planting pheasants out there is the main reason. And Project 26, that one was just a position that Wildlife Services asked for so that they could have an extra person on the ground. And as it turned out, they never did hire that. What they used it for was to hire temporary personnel at times to assist with these other projects when they were intensively doing control. They needed extra ground crews and stuff. And so that's really incorporated in all the other projects. If they need more money to get any of those done, we've had the flexibility in the past to move dollars around and address that.
Okay, projects 27 and 28. Have those projects, are there contracts in place, and has any money been expended on either of those two projects for fiscal year 13?
No. For the record, Pete Bradley, no.